It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind that makes California feel like a postcard. Sunlight poured over neatly trimmed lawns, and the air buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and easy conversation drifting from one backyard to another. Lauren had invited guests over again. She loved hosting. Colleagues from her firm, her husband's golf friends, and women from her fitness group. They filled the patio with loud laughter and confident energy, drinks in hand, voices overlapping like a chorus that didn't need harmony. And then there was me. I stayed where I usually did, just outside the spotlight in the kitchen. My name is Evelyn May Collins, though no one in that house called me Mom anymore. I slid a tray of freshly baked shortbread cookies out of the oven. The recipe was older than Lauren herself, passed down from my own mother. I arranged the cookies carefully, just the way I had been taught decades ago. Neat rows, equal spacing, every detail in place. It was a habit, a way of holding on to something that still felt like mine. Carrying the tray, I stepped outside. The laughter softened for a moment as a few people turned toward me. "Cookies," I said gently. A few guests smiled politely and took one. One woman complimented them, her voice kind. Before I could respond, Lauren laughed. "Oh, she's just around," she said casually, waving her hand in my direction like I was part of the furniture. A light, awkward chuckle passed through the group. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel, but it stung. I stood there for a second, longer than I should have, holding the tray, pretending my hands weren't trembling. Then I turned quietly and went back inside. No one stopped me. No one corrected her. No one said a word. That night I cleaned, like I always did, empty glasses, plates, crumbs, spills. By the time the last guest left and Lauren's heels clicked up the stairs, the kitchen looked untouched. As if the evening had never happened, Eric walked past me, barely glancing up. "Thanks, Evelyn," he muttered. Evelyn, not Mom, not even something close, just a name. 3 days later, I stood alone in the kitchen again, reaching for a mug when my hand slipped. A tall glass toppled from the rack and shattered on the floor. The sound was sharp, too loud. "What did you do now?" Lauren's voice cut through the air behind me. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, bending down to pick up the pieces. She stepped closer, arms crossed. "You really should know your place by now." I froze. "I didn't mean," she held up her hand. "Don't. Just don't." Her voice changed then, colder, sharper. "You think just because you're old, you get to stay here forever? That this is some kind of reward?" "I never said that," I whispered. "If you don't get out of this house," she snapped, pulling her phone from her pocket, "I will call the police." For a moment, I thought she was bluffing, until I heard the dial tone. "Hello," she said calmly. "Yes, I'd like to report a trespasser." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked past her, through the back door, into the garden. That garden. It was the only place that still felt like mine, the soil under my nails. The plants I had nurtured, the quiet afternoons spent tending to something that didn't judge, didn't dismiss, didn't reduce me to nothing. But even there, her voice followed me, sharp, certain, final. And that's when something inside me shifted, not broke, shifted. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tired. I felt awake. The house hadn't always been like this. It wasn't always hers. It started in 1983. Back then, it was just a worn-down Victorian with peeling paint and creaky floors. But to me and my husband, Paul, it was everything. We built our life there, piece by piece. We didn't have much. No fancy vacations, no luxuries. Just long workdays, careful saving, and quiet determination. But we made it ours. We painted the walls together, fixed broken steps, planted a garden that was more weeds than vegetables at first. Lauren was just a little girl then. She would run barefoot through the house, laughter echoing off unfinished walls. Those were good years, hard but good. When Paul got sick, everything slowed down. The house became smaller, quieter. We turned the downstairs room into his bedroom because the stairs became too much. I cooked for him, sat with him, held his hand through the worst nights. When he passed, the silence he left behind was unbearable. I stayed for years after that. But grief has a way of hollowing out even the strongest places. Eventually, Lauren suggested I move in with her. "It'll be better," she said, and I believed her. At first, it wasn't bad. She made tea for me, helped me settle in. I thought maybe this was what family was supposed to feel like again. But slowly, things changed. My belongings disappeared or were replaced. My routines became inconveniences. Then came the rules: no cooking certain foods, no staying up late, no guests, no clutter, no noise. Eventually, no presents. My world shrank to a single room and a single role: stay out of the way. One night, I overheard them talking. "She's always here," Lauren said. "She's exhausting." Like emotional clutter. I stood in the hallway, holding a glass of milk I never drank. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't family anymore. I was a burden. But there was one thing Lauren never asked about. One thing she assumed: the house, the original one, the one Paul and I built our life in, it was still mine. I never transferred ownership, not to her, not to anyone. And that detail would change everything. A week later, she approached me with papers. "It's just for convenience," she said smoothly. "Transfer the house into my name." I looked at her and said no. Her expression hardened instantly. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. A few days later, I got a call from the bank. Someone had tried to use my house for a loan, under Lauren's name, with forged documents. That was the moment everything became clear. This wasn't just disrespect, it was betrayal. That night, I confronted her. "You tried to take my house," I said. She didn't deny it. "You don't need it," she replied. "You don't contribute. You just exist." Those words landed harder than anything else. "You have 1 week," she said, "or I'll have you removed." That night, I made a decision. At 3 a.m., I packed a small suitcase, clothes, documents, memories, and the deed. I left a short note behind. Then I walked out. And I didn't look back. The next morning, I called an old friend, a lawyer, then a realtor. By the end of the week, the house was listed. By sunset, it was sold. 3 offers, cash, fast, clean. I chose a buyer who needed a fresh start. Maybe because I understood that feeling. Lauren didn't, not until the papers arrived. 7 days to vacate, no exceptions. She called me. Over and over, I didn't answer. Because, for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be heard. I had already spoken. A few nights later, she showed up at my new apartment, crying, begging. "Mom, please, I have nowhere to go." I watched her through the screen, the same child I once held, but not the same person. I stepped onto the balcony. She looked up. Hope flickered in her eyes, and I said quietly, "Some things don't get undone." Then I went inside and closed the curtain. Now, I live in a quiet apartment high above the city. I have a small garden again. Mind, mostly, it smells like peace. The phone still rings sometimes. But I don't answer, because I finally remembered something important. Silence isn't weakness, it's power. And sometimes, walking away is the loudest thing you'll ever do.